Whether you're in school or in the professional workplace, the ability to give good feedback to other writers is a highly valued skill. Your professors review manuscripts for journals and book presses in their field of expertise, providing authors with feedback that helps them revise for publication. Professionals in other workplaces also need this skill. Over the course of your career, you'll likely provide a lot of feedback on your colleagues' or coworkers' writing.
In this video, you'll learn some strategies and best practices for giving effective feedback to writers on their drafts.
These recommendations assume that you are giving writers written feedback rather than meeting with them to talk about their drafts, but you can apply these guidelines to real-time conversations as well.
As we discuss these strategies, we'll provide examples of them in action. Feel free to pause the video to give yourself the time you need to read each example.
First, let's talk about what to focus on when you give feedback to a writer. For one, you'll want to focus on the big picture elements of the writing, especially if you're responding to an early draft.
It's easy to notice mechanical or surface issues like grammar and punctuation, but these issues can distract you from important big picture issues like content, organization, and logic.
Think of your draft like a car. You really wouldn't worry about scratches and dings on the surface if the engine wasn't working that well. Especially in early drafts, it's really important to give feedback to writers on big picture issues like content, organization, logical connections, and if these elements relate to the paper's purpose and are good for the audience that the paper is engaging with. These elements, like the engine of a car, drive the paper.
Some of the most valuable information you can provide to a writer is whether you can understand the ideas in their draft. Does the draft have a clear thesis or purpose? Can you identify the main points and how those points are developed? Does the draft leave you with any questions the writer could answer when they revise?
Let's look at an example. Here, the reviewer notes that a general audience might not be able to understand what the passage is saying, and suggests the writer revise it to accommodate that audience.
You can also respond to the writer's ideas. Is the logic of their argument clear? Has the writer offered evidence for their claims? In this comment, the reviewer spots an important claim and suggests that the writer find and cite some evidence to back it up.
Commenting on organization can also be helpful. Has the draft been structured in a way that makes sense, given its content, audience, and purpose? Are the points ordered in a way that allows you to understand the flow? In this comment, the reviewer suggests that the writer consider reordering their points.
When doing peer review for a class assignment, look at the professor's prompt or rubric to see which big picture issues they prioritize, and try to address those issues in your feedback.
In this comment, the reviewer mentions the instructor's prompt to help the writer see that this suggestion addresses an important issue.
Beyond focusing on the big picture, you also want to notice and comment on what is going well in the draft, in addition to pointing to areas for revision.
For a writer, it can be extremely helpful to know what is working well in their draft. If a writer knows what elements are working, they know which ones to keep when they revise.
In addition, when you comment on strengths, the writer knows that you've considered the whole draft thoughtfully, rather than just looking for problems to fix.
Writers are more likely to take up your feedback if they think that you've understood the paper as a whole, in light of what the draft is meant to say or do. So don't forget to tell writers what the draft is doing well.
In this comment, the reviewer lets the writer know that this paragraph is accomplishing what the writer probably intended it to accomplish.
Now we've talked about what to focus on in your comments. 1. Focus on the big picture elements of the writing, especially if you're responding to an early draft, and 2. Notice and comment on what is going well in the draft, as well as indicating areas for revision.
Now let's turn to some strategies for how to comment. First, use a disciplined reading strategy that encourages you to focus on meaning.
Because surface issues can distract you from important big picture elements, read the draft once while ignoring surface issues entirely. Make yourself read for the meaning and big picture elements.
Reading a draft for its meaning requires much deeper thinking than reading for grammar or punctuation does, but giving a writer feedback on those big picture issues will help them revise for a much stronger document.
After you read a draft for its big picture issues, you can do a quicker read for paragraph level issues. Do paragraphs make a clear point, and are they focused on that point? Can you see how ideas within a paragraph connect to each other?
And if you're reading a draft that a writer has already revised and polished, then we can take a final pass at surface issues. But if the writer is going to continue to revise the paper, it doesn't make much sense to do close editing on prose that they are going to rewrite.
In addition, for any suggestion you make, provide an explanation.
It's important to tell the writer why you've made a particular suggestion. If writers understand why you've recommended a change, they can consider it thoughtfully when they revise.
In this comment, the reviewer could have said something brief, like, make this shorter, but instead, they explain why the passage needs to be shortened, and for what purpose. This explanation will help the writer decide how to revise the passage.
And in this comment, the reviewer could have said something brief like, make your thesis more specific. But instead, the reviewer tells the reader what is missing from the thesis, which will help the writer understand how to revise.
Finally, leave marginal comments and a summary note that previews your feedback and establishes rapport with the writer.
The marginal comments, like the ones you viewed already in this video, are each connected to a specific passage in the writer's draft. It's important that you provide these comments throughout the draft so the writer knows where to apply your feedback.
The summary note provides an overview of your feedback and allows you to develop rapport with the writer. Once you have read and commented on the entire draft, allow yourself about 5 minutes to write this note.
A strong summary note addresses the writer by their name, comments on the paper's content and ideas, previews and summarizes your marginal comments, and wishes the writer happy revising. We recommend placing this note at the top of your feedback, directly on the document, so it's the first thing the writer sees.
In the summary note you see here, the reviewer engages with the writer's content, comments on what's going well, previews suggestions they made in the marginal comments, and signs off.
Here's a summary of the strategies we've just discussed. When delivering feedback, focus on the big picture elements of the writing, especially if you're responding to an early draft. Notice and comment on what is going well in the draft, as well as identifying areas for revision. Use a disciplined reading strategy that encourages you to focus on meaning. For any suggestion you make, provide an explanation, and leave marginal comments and a summary note that previews your feedback and establishes rapport with the writer.
Using these strategies will help you provide effective feedback to writers in your college courses and in the professional workplace.
If you have any questions about providing feedback or would like to discuss these strategies with us further, we'd be happy to help. You can email us at wcenter@gmu.edu or visit us in person in the Lab for Writing and Communication in Johnson Center, room 227E. Thanks for watching and happy reviewing!